floating in the shattered orbit of Meridius Prime. The debris fields drifted like silent tombstones against the distant glare of a sun long hidden by smoke. Fractured hulls, twisted beams of alloy, and drifting modules tumbled in zero gravity. Now and then, flickers of dying power sparked across torn cables, only to vanish almost instantly. It was the aftermath of a conflict that had, for a fleeting moment, seemed to promise peace. The Council forces had declared victory over the Validar invasion less than a day ago, but the broken remnants of orbital stations painted a far grimmer picture. Still, across the battered hulls of the Council's cruisers, sporadic cheers rose over open comms, fueled by relief rather than genuine triumph. They believed, in their hearts, that the war was finally over. In the far edge of the orbital chaos, a small corvette bearing the insignia of humanity's defense delegation kept its distance. The craft was neither heavily armed nor impressive to behold. Its gray exterior and efficient, no-frills design stood in stark contrast to the ornate, ceremonial ships of the Council species. Captain Alexandra Green stood at the main viewport, arms folded behind her back, observing the slow spin of a massive Council battlecruiser with a smoldering hole through its midsection. She pressed her lips into a thin line, exhaling softly. The official communiques claimed the Council's Grand Alliance had driven the Validar from Meridius Prime, routing them in a climactic showdown. But as she surveyed the wreckage, the word victory felt hollow. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Jerome Kong, approached with quiet steps. "Captain," he said, voice hushed, "we just received another encrypted data burst from Sector 9. It's flagged priority." Green shifted her gaze from the window. "Cerberus again?" she asked, though she already suspected the answer. Kong nodded, handing over a handheld pad. "The intel suggests the Validar are showing signs of coordinated withdrawal, not the panicked retreat the Council believes." Green scanned the lines of text with a deepening frown. "They're not running with their tails between their legs," she murmured. "They're pulling back to regroup." She raised her eyes to the battered starfield beyond the viewport. "The Council might be celebrating, but we'd be fools to think this is over." Below her vantage point, on the planet's surface, the Council's victory parade was already in full swing. Even from orbit, Green caught glimpses of the multicolored light shows and ornamental signals. She couldn't hear the grand orchestras or the speeches echoing across Meridius Prime's capital city, but the self-congratulation was evident in every official broadcast. Alien dignitaries, draped in regal attire, delivered triumphant declarations about how they had banished the Validar threat once and for all. Green heard it across the open channels, a swirl of self-assured statements from Croc generals, the insectal Yudari ambassadors, and the serpentine Varzal lords. They intended to rebuild, to move on, as though the last embers of war were fading into memory. Nobody wanted to listen to warnings from the small human delegation that had observed the conflict from the sidelines. "Lieutenant," Green said softly, "patch me through to any Council official who still has a working comm. We need to deliver the new data." Kong hesitated. "Captain, we've tried. They're ignoring us. Most channels are locked into the comm ceremony for the celebrations. The rest, well, they don't really trust what we have to say. They're convinced it's finished." Green gave a tired nod. "Of course they are." Her Corvette drifted gently away from the main debris field, scanning for survivors. Despite the official stance that no more enemy presence lingered, her instruments told a different story. Anomalies in the system's outer orbit, subspace spikes reminiscent of pre-jump formations. She wasn't sure if these signals belonged to Validar vessels or something else, but she suspected trouble. There was always trouble brewing when the rest of the galaxy turned complacent. 2 hours later, Green stood in a narrow briefing room aboard the Corvette, the lights overhead humming softly. She had arranged a secure channel to speak with a high-ranking figure from Earth's clandestine intelligence, someone with direct insight into the Cerberus program. The screen flickered, revealing the sharp profile of Jonas Phoenix. He wore no insignia beyond a small patch with a minimalistic Earth emblem. This was no ordinary envoy. He was a key operative rumored to have orchestrated shadow missions deep behind council lines for months. "Captain Green," Phoenix said, voice low but certain, "have you received the data from observers 9 and 12? She inclined her head. "Yes, sir. We're seeing the same patterns. The Validar are moving with purpose. But the council doesn't want to hear it." Phoenix's stern expression didn't shift. "They'll hear it soon enough." Green wanted to ask more, to press him on the rumored existence of hidden human fleets, on the purpose of Cerberus, but she knew better. Such topics were never discussed openly. Instead, she simply said, "We're standing by. If the Validar strike again, the Council's forces are in no shape to hold them off." Phoenix nodded once. "Understood. Keep watch. Once we confirm the next step, we'll initiate Cerberus." The line ended abruptly. Down on Meridius Prime, the planet's capital city was in a frenzy of celebration. Towering Croc warriors marched in a formal procession, wearing spiked ceremonial armor with polished plating. The Udari's multi-limbed dancers performed elaborate routines with shimmering ribbons of bioluminescent silk. Along the Grand Boulevard, Varzal dignitaries, tall and willowy, chanted in their melodic dialect to honor the countless souls who had supposedly secured the final victory. Confetti and holographic banners filled the sky. Each species displayed its crest and colors, overshadowing the fact that an entire orbit above them was filled with broken vessels and drifting bodies. In one of the upper spires of the Council's central administration tower, a short, tense meeting took place among the highest-ranking officers. High Protector Amitaru Vrex, a Croc female with ridged bone plating around her neck, stood at the head of the table. Her voice resonated with a low, commanding echo. "We have driven the Validar from Meridius Prime," she declared. "Their command ship was never destroyed, but we saw them vanish. That is enough." A Varzal liaison, with a silver crest that ran from the top of his skull down the back of his neck, shifted uncomfortably. "Their technology allows them to fold space in ways our scanners often can't track. It might be wise to remain cautious." But another official, a broad-shouldered Udari with multiple compound eyes, clacked his mandibles in disagreement. "We have no reason to believe they'll be back soon. We've expended enough resources on this war." The conversation was overshadowed by a pervasive arrogance. For centuries, the Council had commanded the galaxy's primary trade routes, cultural exchanges, and, more importantly, the largest combined fleets. Humans, late to the cosmic stage, were never quite part of those grand strategies. They were tolerated, occasionally appreciated for their logistical efficiency, but largely kept at arm's length. Nobody in that top chamber seemed to register that a small human corvette was on comm channels, transmitting urgent warnings. Hours later, a final wave of official celebrations began. Massive holographic images of fallen Council heroes sparkled above the city's central plaza. Survivors of the recent battle were paraded through cheering crowds, receiving floral wreaths from each species in turn. The event had a pageantry reminiscent of ancient triumphs, the kind that lulled entire civilizations into complacency. It was precisely during that moment of greatest spectacle that Green's Corvette picked up the dreaded confirmation. An outlying station near the edge of the Meridius system had gone dark. No distress call, no burst transmissions, only abrupt silence. Green, standing by the sensor console, felt her stomach drop. "Lieutenant Kong, run the data. Is this station within the approach corridor of the suspected Validar position?" Kang's fingers danced over the controls. "Yes," he said grimly. "This lines up exactly with our intelligence." "They're not gone, Captain." Green braced a hand against the console as the Corvette's overhead lights flickered. "Patch the report to the Council flagship. Then get me Colonel Redding at Earth Defense Command if you can." She already knew the Council might ignore her again, but protocol demanded an attempt. Within minutes, a swirling argument broke out over local channels. Green's urgent call reached a minor functionary in the Council's communication branch, someone who had no real authority. The functionary insisted they would relay the concerns, but that the Council was in the middle of victory ceremonies. They asked if Green might wait until the new shift of strategic officers took over in a few hours. Furious, she cut the connection. The only solace was that her own superiors from Earth were listening. At a hidden outpost on the far side of the sector, Jonas Phoenix received the same data and moved decisively. Initiate partial mobilization, he told the shadowed figures in the war room. We don't need council approval for what comes next. The watchers in the room were a mix of humans with stoic faces and intense eyes, each quietly proud that their species had refused to remain powerless. Some of them were the rumored architects of Cerberus. They had taken Earth's modest leaps into interstellar colonization and turned them into a stealth network of intelligence and force, built right under the Council's nose. They had done so because from the start, the Council never believed the humans had the ambition or capacity to go beyond menial roles. That ignorance, as Phoenix often said, would be their greatest mistake. Meanwhile, far beyond the system's bright star, the Valator gathered. Strategist Calarax, standing on a command deck grown from a living nerve lattice, stared at the swirling data lines that pulsed through the semi-organic console. Valator ships were shaped more like gigantic arthropods than mechanical constructs. Their hulls bristled with contoured plating that extended from their own bodies. They lived inside their ships. While the Council believed in advanced AI targeting systems, the Valator had fused pilot and vessel into a single neural network. Their technology was terrifying, especially when they launched sudden offensives that left defenders no time to react. Calarax's spined crest rippled with deep violet pulses of determination, a sign of readiness. We strike again, hissed a subordinate. They assume we have fled. Perfect for a second wave. Calarax's lipless mouth parted in something akin to a grin. Yes, soon, they will wonder why they ever believed the war had ended. On Meridius Prime, the parade reached its apex. Thunderous applause and cheering filled the streets. Alien children danced in luminescent costumes, swirling around the towering arches erected to commemorate this so-called final victory. High Protector Vrex, in a gilded dais above the crowd, raised her arms to proclaim the end of the Valator threat. The moment hung in the air, captured by thousands of hollow drones. Then, in a flash, every screen across the city flickered. Lights dimmed. A wave of static cut through comms. High above, in orbit, Council warships detected a new subspace distortion. Green's Corvette confirmed it in real time. A battered Council battleship, the Tyrian Vex, tried to hail everyone on open frequencies, breathless updates pouring from its unprepared comm officer. We have multiple inbound signals at the edge of the system. Valator's signature confirmed. Deafening blasts of feedback cut the transmission. On Meridius Prime's surface, the cheers twisted into cries of fear. The illusions of safety collapsed in mere seconds. Council brass scrambled, some still in dress uniforms from the parade, to revert to battle stations. Command lines were chaotic. The alien children who had been dancing on the city's central steps found themselves ushered away by anxious guardians. Overhead, the once ceremonial warships tried to reorder themselves into defensive formations, but most were underpowered or partially damaged from the previous battle. Perfect prey for a new assault. At first, only half a dozen Valator warships appeared, each shaped like a monstrous living blade. Then another dozen slid out of subspace behind them, forming an ever tighter net around Meridius Prime. The Council's immediate response was too slow, as if they were still waking from a dream. Lines of flak and beam weaponry lit up the starfield, but the Valator danced with fluid grace, continuing their encirclement. Over the surface, a terrifying hush gripped the populace. Cameras caught the grim reality. Meridius Prime's defenses were compromised and uncoordinated. The unstoppable second wave had arrived. Captain Green stood in her Corvette's command deck, jaws clenched as she watched the data feed. Lieutenant Kong, hail the Council again. Tell them we have a plan if they'll only listen. Kong tried, but the chaos of comm traffic drowned them out. Green's frustration boiled. Still, she persisted, switching to direct channels to Earth. High Command, we need Cerberus authorized now. A short pause, then Jonas Phoenix's voice came through, calm as steel. Cerberus is a go. In the sealed operations chamber, Phoenix, turned to a row of silent officers. Send the code out. All Cerberus assets on standby. It was no secret among the higher echelons of Earth's clandestine forces that humanity had spent decades building something new. While the Council put their faith in advanced AI fleets or enormous warships with ceremonial grandeur, humanity had refined stealth technology, analog override systems, and redundant engineering. They had hidden entire dreadnoughts within the surfaces of lifeless moons, created elaborate illusions to avoid detection, and embedded intelligence teams across Council space to watch for the perfect moment. Phoenix and his circle had realized, early on, that the galaxy was a far more dangerous place than the Council's hubris allowed them to admit. Now, beneath the rocky crust of a barren moon orbiting Meridius Prime, monstrous shapes stirred in subterranean docks. Massive hatches built to appear as natural craters slid open, revealing the dull metallic hide of the dreadnought Saladin, an unmarked behemoth that dwarfed most Council battleships. Another moon in the same orbit rumbled as hidden plates shifted, releasing a second giant, the Yamato, rumored to possess an experimental jump system. On the edge of the system's asteroid belt, more colossally silent vessels began to wake. Entire sections of their hulls folded apart to vent ancient reactors that had lain dormant for years. Some Council scouts saw these bizarre changes in sensor readouts, but they were too overwhelmed to notice or even guess that it was humanity behind them. They assumed it might be more Valator trickery. Then Saladin emerged. The dreadnought's thick hull bore no insignia, no bright color, just layered plating of matte steel designed to absorb sensor pings. Engines flickered to life in near silence. Analog thrusters fired in carefully orchestrated bursts. Next came Elkid, Tesla, and others, each gliding from hidden strongholds that no one had ever suspected were there. High above, the battered Council ships reeled as they watched unmarked dreadnoughts appear, shifting into alignment around Meridius Prime. In the heart of one such dreadnought, the Tesla, Commander Lars Petrovic oversaw final systems checks. He had spent months pretending to be a mere logistics inspector on Council stations, funneling data back to Earth. Now the mask was off. Commander, a weapons officer called, Gravitic Arrays stable. Mass driver is hot. Rotation drive ready. Petrovic nodded, lips pressed tight. Prepare for engagement. Priority is intercepting any assault on the planet. If the Council recognized them, so be it. Humans weren't going to watch the destruction of Meridius Prime just to protect their secrecy. The real war had arrived, and Earth intended to fight. Within minutes, the Valator assault met with an unexpected complication. Ballistic pulses streaked through vacuum from positions that hadn't shown up on their scans. The first volley came from Elkid, tearing through the hull of a Valator cruiser with disconcerting ease. Another pair of pulses slammed into a second ship, severing its thrusters. Valator neural networks scrambled to locate the source, but there was no digital signature. Their advanced hacking protocols found empty space. Then Saladin launched a broadside that slammed into the flank of the Valator main formation, shredding smaller frigates before they could raise shields. The dreadnought's analog targeting was unaffected by jamming or infiltration. The Valator's advantage crumbled. Strategist Calarax watched in fury from the command deck. Council warships were scattered and half-functional, hardly a threat. But these new arrivals, unregistered, silent, unstoppable, were cutting into Valator lines. Calarax demanded real-time infiltration attempts, viral pulses, anything to compromise these unknown intruders. Every attempt found emptiness. No AI, no open comm signals, no ephemeral digital link to exploit. The Valator's superior network-based approach was worthless. Calarax's frustration turned to alarm as a wave of railgun fire from Tesla hammered two more cruisers, sending them spinning off course. Moments later, the dreadnought Yamato blinked out of normal space, its experimental jump system warping it into the center of the Valator formation. Freed from typical FTL constraints, it launched a barrage of high-velocity projectiles in a 360-degree spread, leaving multiple Valator ships either crippled or drifting. A hush of awe overtook the battered council comm frequencies as watchers realized these massive ships were on their side, at least for now. Captain Green, from her corvette, stared at the developing battle with open wonder. She recognized Earth's hallmark designs in these behemoths, even if she'd never personally seen them. So, it was real, she breathed. They actually built them. In the Council's improvised command hub, High Protective Rex and her staff gaped at the sensor feed. "Who are they?" hissed an Yudari officer. "They're not responding to our channels. No transponders." Another Council official stammered. "Could they be a lost empire or mercenaries? We have no record of such vessels." Rex shook her head, bone ridges rattling with tension. She recalled a rumor once whispered in closed sessions. The humans might have hidden resources beyond what they admitted, but she had dismissed it as fantasy. Now, she could only watch. The battle raged for long minutes that stretched into a near eternity. Valator ships, deprived of their usual advantage, attempted to retreat or regroup under the onslaught of these quiet dreadnoughts. Whenever they rotated formation, the unstoppable salvos from Earth's vessels hammered them again and again. The Tesla performed a spinning maneuver so abrupt that Council watchers believed it had lost control, until it stabilized, launching a pinpoint strike that incinerated a Valator carrier. The Elkid's gravitational cannons caused entire flanking squadrons to crumple in space as if crushed by an invisible hand. Saladin advanced, methodically destroying any ship that crossed its path. The Yamato folded in and out of local space, delivering punishing hits from unpredictable angles. Finally, the battered remains of the Valator flotilla broke. Some ships attempted to vanish into subspace the same way they had arrived, though some FDL drives malfunctioned under the relentless pounding. Others drifted as lifeless hulks. Strategist Calarax's last sight was a rotating dreadnought's silhouette lining up for one more shot. With a guttural hiss of defeated rage, Calarax abandoned ship via an escape protocol that severed the organic hull. The main Valator vessel imploded seconds later under the Tesla's barrage. Then everything went quiet. The entire system fell silent except for the crackle of cosmic interference and the faint moans of Council ships with damaged reactors. The unmarked dreadnoughts loomed over Meridius Prime, stern and unmoving. Council officers, wide-eyed and trembling, realized that if these vessels chose to turn on them next, there would be no hope. Yet the dreaded moment did not come. The human dreadnoughts simply held position. On Green's corvette, an incoming signal made her jump. She pressed the earpiece. "Green here." Jonas Phoenix's steady tone resonated. "The threat is neutralized. Remain on standby. Do not broadcast." She paused. "Understood." On the planet's surface, trembling Council cameras zoomed in on the silent colossi. In the capital city, thousands gawked at overhead displays. Wounded Council officers cursed or prayed in confusion. Some dared to hail these unknown warships, only to receive no reply. An hour later, lights dimmed across half the fleet as the dreadnoughts shifted to minimal power mode. It was a clear sign of disinterest in further confrontation. The Council forces were left to lick their wounds and salvage what was left of the once celebratory day. High Protective Rex convened a frantic, closed meeting. "We must discover who they are," she demanded, pacing across a battered control deck. "We owe them a debt, or perhaps we face a new threat. The entire galaxy will want answers." But at that precise moment, every functioning display flickered, replaced by a monochrome feed. A single figure stood in frame, Jonas Phoenix, wearing a dark uniform with no decoration. Behind him hung a plain gray banner marked by 3 concentric circles, the only symbol that might represent Earth's Hidden Defense Command. When he spoke, his voice was calm, but carried an edge that caused the entire Council leadership to hold its breath. "Citizens of the galaxy," he said, "humanity has acted because necessity demanded it. We offered warnings, but we were ignored. We saw the signs, but our voices held no weight in your halls. We did not act to claim authority or demand gratitude. We acted to protect." He let those words settle in the stunned silence. Many of you do not know us or see us as minor participants in cosmic affairs. That was your assumption. Today, that assumption has been challenged. He paused, eyes hard. We do not ask for your permission. We do not seek your approval. We have done our duty. The next time you decide who matters and who does not, remember what you have witnessed here. The transmission ended abruptly, replaced by static. Council leadership stood frozen in disbelief. Some believed it a trick or infiltration by a rogue faction. Others, however, recalled the small human corvette that had tried to warn them. Whispers began to spread about centuries of potential subterfuge. Some insisted humanity had overstepped. A few recognized the dark truth. They had always dismissed the humans, never realizing how far they could advance away from prying eyes. Furious arguments broke out, overshadowed by the hard reality that if not for these unmarked warships, the Validar might have taken Meridius Prime with ease. Far above, the dreadnought Saladin turned slowly, venting excess heat into space. In its hangar bay, Chief Engineer Farah Nuri and Commander Samir Jalali surveyed the minimal damage from the brief engagement. The older, analog nature of the dreadnought systems had proven its strength once again. Jalali looked at the scorch marks on the hull. It's not as bad as it could have been, he noted. Nuri shrugged. We're lucky the Validar never got close enough for boarding. The two walked in silence for a moment. So, Nuri continued quietly, do we stay out in the open now, or vanish back under the moon's surface? Jalali's eyes flicked to the overhead feed showing swirling debris fields. That's up to Phoenix, but we've played our hand. The Council and the Validar know we exist. On the Tesla, Petrovic ran a final set of checks. He was satisfied to see the Dreadnought systems performed better than any test sim predicted. Commander, an officer asked, what if the Council tries to approach us with demands or forms an alliance? Do we open channels? Petrovic shook his head. We follow orders. For now, we maintain silence. The rest of the crew, adrenaline still coursing through their veins, obeyed without question. They had trained for years in secrecy, preparing for the day humanity would step from the shadows. Meanwhile, in the capital city, fear and uncertainty replaced the earlier festivities. Many civilians had never heard of Earth, or at least not as a military player. They huddled around flickering holoscreens, replaying the brief images of the dreadnoughts methodically dismantling the Validar. The question on every lip was whether these new arrivals intended to protect or dominate. The Council's top brass, scattered across bunkers and orbital stations, were no less confused. Some insisted on immediate negotiation. Others whispered that Earth should be confronted. A battered Varzal commander pointed out the obvious. If they wanted us destroyed, they could have done so already. High Protective Rex tried to gather her composure for another planetary address. She stepped onto a makeshift balcony, cameras rolling. Her voice, usually booming, trembled as she began. People of Meridius Prime, we have been aided this day by a new force that calls itself humanity. They have driven back the Validar when we were at our weakest. While we do not yet know their ultimate intentions, we owe them our survival in this hour. She swallowed, glancing up at the sky. Let us hope we find reason to stand together, rather than in opposition. The broadcast ended, leaving billions across the planet anxious and uncertain. The hours that followed were marked by an uneasy standoff. Humanity's dreadnoughts remained in orbit, like silent sentinels. They neither advanced nor retreated, as though waiting for something. The Council, wounded in pride and resources, hesitated to take any aggressive measure. Across the cosmic channels, species from other star systems demanded answers. Was there a new overlord in the galaxy? How had the humans built such an arsenal without detection? The Council's intelligence apparatus sputtered with 1,000 theories, few of which made any sense. On the Corvette, Green busied herself coordinating humanitarian missions for Council ships that still needed rescue. Despite her frustration with their arrogance, she refused to stand idle while life hung in the balance. Lieutenant Kong, she said, send out small search and recover teams. We have suits and medical supplies. Kong nodded, a faint smile crossing his features. Even if the Council hates us for showing up with bigger guns, we can at least do some good. The Corvette's cargo bay began launching rescue pods to help drifting survivors. Word spread quickly that the humans weren't ignoring the suffering, nor were they rubbing their victory in anyone's face. Eventually, the remains of the Valadur fleet limped out of the system, those ships that could still manage FTL jumps vanishing one by one. They left behind a field of twisted debris and entire squadrons that no longer answered commands. The war wasn't over, but the second onslaught had been thoroughly shattered. Strategic experts across the Council started to piece together how it all happened. Every line of reasoning led back to the same question. How had Earth come to wield so much might? They found no easy answer. The humans had always been diligent, methodical, and good at integration. Now it was obvious that they had cultivated something else beneath that polite veneer. If it hadn't been for that something, Meridius Prime might have fallen, and the entire Council with it. Late that evening, or what passed for evening on the half-ruined planet, an encrypted communication reached High Protective Rex. She stood alone in the Council's battered central communications tower, ignoring the stares of aides who fussed around the edges of the console. The screen was black, except for a single text line, standby for an address from the Earth Defense Command. Rex's hearts, she had two, given Croc physiology, thumped heavily in her chest. She keyed a response. The connection burst into life, revealing Jonas Phoenix again, this time flanked by two other humans. Behind them, a plain metal wall and that same Stark banner. Phoenix inclined his head just slightly. High Protector, he began, voice level. We have no wish to see your species suffer. We recognize the Council's role in holding this galaxy together. But you must acknowledge that your governance has overlooked many crucial details, not the least of which was the Valadur threat. Had it been up to you, Meridius Prime would be ash now. Rex tried to remain regal, but the weight of his words pressed on her. We recognize your contribution. We ask, in good faith, that you share the intelligence that allowed you to prepare. We can handle any threat if we stand united. Phoenix's eyes narrowed, though not unkindly. The time for unity may come, but you have made it abundantly clear how little you value our voice in the past. We will not simply hand over what we've built, nor let ourselves be subsumed under your bureaucracy. We are prepared to cooperate to keep the galaxy safe, but we do so on our own terms. Rex inhaled slowly, her plated shoulders lifting. If it's cooperation you want, the Council is willing to open new dialogues, new treaties. Phoenix's lips curved into the faintest trace of a wry smile. We'll see how sincere those offers are once you've regained your composure. Until then, High Protector, know this. Humanity will act when the galaxy needs us, not when the Council permits us. That's all I can say. The screen went dead before she could reply. In the darkness of the communications chamber, Vrex stood a long while, reflecting on the new reality. The Council was no longer the undisputed pivot of galactic stability. That role, for better or worse, was now shared with a race that had just demonstrated terrifying competence. Could it be that Earth was the only reason the Valadur had not spread further? Slowly, she left the tower, the sound of her footsteps echoing against the battered metal floors. Across the star lanes, news of the Meridius Prime defense spread like wildfire. Factions once indifferent to Earth's presence suddenly clamored for any scrap of information about them. Some thought the humans might become tyrants, unstoppable with their silent dreadnoughts. Others speculated that humans would isolate themselves again, returning to secrecy. Conjectures soared, but solid facts were sparse. The only consistent message was the recorded footage. Unmarked behemoths, black and unyielding, laying waste to the Valadur in a single, decisive engagement. In the hidden war room of the Saladin, Samir Jalali updated logs with the results of each shot fired, each system tested. Chief Engineer Nuri rubbed grime from her face, exhausted but satisfied with the success of the analog weaponry. We defied every expectation out there, she said. Even I'm surprised how smooth the gravitic pulses were. Jalalai's gaze flicked to a silent overhead camera feed, showing the blackness of space outside. For all our success, you know this changes everything. Humanity can't hide in the shadows anymore. Nuri nodded. It was only a matter of time. Their quiet conversation gave voice to the tension many in the crew felt. They had lived in secrecy for so long, preparing. Now it was all out in the open. On the surface below, the Council's tri-species guard, what was left of it, tried to maintain order among frightened civilians. Medical teams tended to wounded from the fresh Validar incursion. Some Council officers braved the orbital wreckage to salvage what they could. The humans, for the most part, made no further demands. Their presence spoke louder than any words. We are here, and we will do what must be done. Captain Green's corvette continued its rescue operations in low orbit. She personally guided a shuttle to one of the severely damaged Council cruisers. Through the vacuum of space, she and her team brought supplies and helped patch the gaping hull so the vessel's crew wouldn't suffocate. When the alien crew, Krok, Varzel, and a single Yudari realized they owed their survival to the very humans they had once regarded with condescension, a profound sense of disquiet took hold. Green herself felt no need to gloat. She simply made certain everyone was stable, then signaled her corvette to rendezvous for the next mission. At last, after another day of tension, the dreadnoughts showed signs of movement. The Saladin pivoted from its stationary orbit, sliding gracefully toward the system's perimeter. The Tesla performed a gentle spin, realigning with the asteroid belt. Elkid and Yamato followed suit, their engines humming with deep, resonant power. Council vessels scrambled to track them, but the humans didn't appear ready to fire. Instead, they accelerated on slow, purposeful vectors that carried them away from Meridius Prime. Their large silhouettes merged with the star-swept horizon, leaving only faint traces of engine heat. Council chatter lit up. Some believed the humans were departing. Others expected a final show of dominance. But there was no confrontation. The dreadnoughts simply receded, like an enormous tide drawing back into the cosmic sea. Jonas Phoenix monitored the entire retreat from an undisclosed location, possibly another stealth outpost in the system. He watched with satisfaction as the Council ships, battered and uncertain, did not move to interfere. The point had been made. The galaxy now understood that Earth would not wait for their approval. Some might resent the humans for that. Some might fear them, but they would no longer ignore them. When the final human dreadnought blinked off the Council's main sensors, a deep hush fell across the battered system. On Meridius Prime, the new day's sunrise illuminated the scorched skyline, revealing collapsed structures, fields of rubble, and still glowing crash sites. Yet despite the devastation, millions had survived who might otherwise have perished. Some quietly thanked these mysterious human ships. Others cursed them for shattering the illusions of Council supremacy. But no one doubted that the war had changed forever. A Council crisis meeting convened soon after, with representatives from every major species. They assembled in a subterranean hall, the walls reinforced from centuries of conflict. Emblems of the fallen fluttered. Tension crackled in the air. High Protector Rex sat at the head, flanked by officials who had, days before, crowed about certain victory. Now they wore grim expressions, eyes hooded. "We have faced the Validar and we're nearly undone," Vrex said. "Our survival hinges on how we address this new balance of power. Humanity has shown us a side we never suspected. The question is, do we attempt alliance, or do we brand them a rogue threat?" The delegates were divided. Some demanded full negotiation and immediate integration of Earth's military into the Council's chain of command. Others argued that such a formidable force must be contained or regulated through treaties. In every anxious face, there was an underlying admission. The Council could no longer afford to ignore the humans. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of an unremarkable station orbiting a different star, Jonas Phoenix ended the final operational logs of Cerberus with a single line. Phase 1 successful. He set the data pad aside. Around him, the command staff, men and women who had orchestrated Earth's silent buildup, exhaled in relief. One officer asked, "Should we bring them home?" referring to the dreadnoughts. Phoenix's gaze hardened. Not yet. This galaxy is bigger than Meridius Prime. The Valadur are only one threat. We keep our forces spread, vigilant, prepared. Another officer, a woman with a scar across her cheek, folded her arms. So the Council sees us as a wild card now. Phoenix inclined his head. They'll try to figure out how to control us. They'll fail. When they realize cooperation is their best option, we'll be ready to talk. Back on Meridius Prime, Captain Green stood on a balcony that overlooked the scarred city. She watched alien civilians picking through rubble. It reminded her of old images from Earth's own troubled history. She felt pride in having saved so many lives, yet a sense of foreboding lay heavy on her chest. She recognized that humanity's open display of strength had changed the cosmic order. It was likely just the start of a greater reckoning. She offered a silent wish that the next confrontation, whatever it might be, would lead to something better than endless war. But the galaxy's track record was not reassuring. Her earpiece chimed. "Green here." Kang's voice came through. "We just received an all-channels hail from the Council, requesting direct dialogue with any official of the Human Defense Command." Green sighed. "We expected that. Let them know we'll pass the request along, but we need instructions from High Command first." She paused, looking at the smoldering skyline. "It's not our place to negotiate." She ended the call, stepping away from the balcony. Deep in her mind, she replayed the furious images of the battle. How swiftly the dreadnoughts had neutralized a threat the entire Council had failed to contain. She could almost hear the collective shift in perception as billions across the galaxy realized that humanity was no longer merely a supplier of logistical goods or a token presence. They were a force. In the days that followed, rumor and speculation overshadowed all else. Some said the humans must have discovered lost technology from an ancient empire. Others whispered that Earth scientists had perfected a new type of subspace fold. More pragmatic voices admitted that maybe, just maybe, humans had simply worked harder and quieter than anyone had ever believed possible. The deeper truth that Earth had been systematically overlooked, disregarded as too small to matter, was rarely acknowledged. Yet if one listened carefully, they would hear it. The galaxy had grown arrogant, and the humans had seized that blind spot to build the capabilities they now displayed. Across the scattered remnants of Validur's forces, a different conversation took shape. Survivors transmitted frantic messages to their home sectors, detailing the unstoppable machines that had obliterated them. Some Valadur cells speculated that the humans were not an emerging power, but an ancient one, some hidden terror only now awakened. The Valadur race was anything but complacent, and they still burned with the desire to dominate the galaxy. But for the first time, they would have to factor in an opponent that did not fit into their usual strategies. They would retreat to plan, to adapt, and to evolve. That was the Valadur way. And so, while the Council scrambled to find new alliances, while the populace of Meridius Prime worked to rebuild their shattered homes, while rumors flared on every trade station and diplomatic outpost, the humans quietly reassessed. They had performed exactly as planned, unveiling their secret dreadnoughts only when necessity forced them to. Now the entire cosmic stage was aware that Earth was a player, possibly the player. Even among humans, opinions varied. Some believed they should seize the opportunity to lead the Council. Others argued for isolation. But most simply recognized that war in the galaxy was rarely final. Only vigilance, preparation, and a willingness to act decisively would keep the horrors at bay. In a small observation lounge on the Tesla, Commander Petrovic gazed at the planet below, arms crossed. The last salvage efforts were wrapping up, and soon they would depart. "We arrived in force," he reflected quietly, "and we turned the tide." An ensign nearby nodded, her eyes shining with the afterglow of victory. "Do you think the Council will ever see us as equals now?" she asked. Petrovic let out a humorless chuckle. "They'll see us as something. Whether they choose to call it friend or threat is up to them. Meanwhile, on a deserted plateau overlooking the capital city's ruin, an Udari child crouched among the rubble, staring at the sky. In the distance, faint glints of metal signaled the last of the human ships conducting rescue scans. The child's guardian approached. "Come," she said in melodic Udari language. "This place is not safe." The child pointed upward. "Look at them. They don't sing or wave banners. They don't speak to us. They just help." The adult gently took the child's hand. "They are humans," she explained, voice trembling with a mixture of fear and gratitude. "And we know nothing of what they want." In that moment, the Corvette carrying Captain Green soared overhead, a silent silhouette crossing the battered skyline. She hadn't come to collect medals or thanks. None of her people had. They had simply arrived in force when the galaxy needed them most and then, as quietly as they had come, begun to withdraw. The child's wide eyes followed the sleek craft until it was no more than a speck. At length, the midday sun broke through the planet's smoky atmosphere. Wreckage glinted all around. The war was not truly over, but Meridius Prime still stood. While Council forces struggled to regroup, Earth's dreadnoughts receded into the uncharted corners of space, readying themselves for whatever storm might come next. In every corridor of power, from the Council's grand halls to the hidden dens of Valator insurgents, only one truth reigned. They had assumed the war was over, but then humanity had arrived in force. Nothing would ever be the same again.